Welcome back to the Football League Paper podcast. My name is Matt Badcock. I'm joined by our editor, John Lyons, and our chief writer, Chris Dunlavy. Chaps, thanks for joining us. How are we?
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, all good, thanks. All good, thanks, mate.
Good. Lots to talk about. We'll just do a bit of admin before we start. Thank you, everyone, for joining. If you could like and subscribe to this YouTube channel, we'd really appreciate it. It does give us a boost. And we'll crack straight in. It's been a busy morning already. Obviously, the news that came out over the weekend was Huddersfield moving on from Lee Grant. Obviously, having a tricky run on that 3-1 defeat to Burton on Saturday, didn't they? But they've already appointed Liam Manning, who obviously started the season at Norwich and has suddenly found himself in a new job quite quickly after leaving there. Chris, we'll come to you first. Let's start with Lee Grant. Obviously, he had a great start to the season, didn't he, in his first job? And you never like to see managers when they, new young managers kind of going in and, having these opportunities and it not quite going how they'd want.
Yeah, it's a shame for him. I've spoken to him a couple of times this season, Lee Grant, and he speaks well and he's very personable. And yeah, like you say, he had that great start. I think they won. It was something like they won 4 of the first 5 of the first 7. We're right up there. But I was looking at it earlier, and if you look at the form since the start of October, I think that, because I guess you could look at it and say, look, they're 6th in League One. It's not a disaster. They're doing okay. But I guess from the club's point of view, if you look at the form from the 1st of October, then they're 16th in the form table from that point. So there has been that sort of sustained drop-off after that really good start, which makes the start look like a bit of an outlier. But yeah, it's a shame to see him go. I don't think he ever really won over the fan base there particularly. He came in, he spoke a lot about he had this thing about, he used to speak about playing northern football. I don't know if you ever heard this. He used to talk about playing northern football. And it's like all these buzzwords and sort of, the whatever way, the Swansea way or the West Ham way or whatever it is. Like, I think you're setting yourself up for a fall talking about this stuff because for a start, not everybody really knows what it means. It may mean nothing. And you're kind of always striving for something that might be unachievable. So I think there was a bit of frustration about that. I think it was seen as a bit silly. No one was really sure what it meant, but they were just so inconsistent, really. I mean, if you look over his time, they're this mad mix that they're the top scorers in the league. So they've scored more goals than anybody else, but there's only 4 teams who've conceded more. So entertaining, but just wildly inconsistent. The struggle to put results together, the win, lose and draw. And I think there's a feeling that with the squad they've got, with the money behind them, with the new owner, newish 2023, Kevin Nagle came in, they should be doing better. And I've written a little bit about it in my column, though. It's a very difficult thing, and I guess we'll talk about it a bit when we move on to Liam Manning. But it's a club that's been struggling ever since they got relegated from the Premier League in 2019. Really, it's been there's been moments where they've looked like picking up, but generally it's been a very steady decline. And I think when that happens, we'll all have seen it at various clubs we've been to, probably at our own clubs we support as well. When that sort of thing happens, and when you have season after season after season where things aren't going well, when signings are poor, when things are disappointing, it doesn't take much for a fan, for people to start grumbling and for things to go wrong and for people to turn on the manager. And that's not a criticism of the fans at all, because we've all been there as fans. It's just what happens, and I think that's really the challenge facing Liam Manning now, is that he's walking into a club which on paper is strong, but in reality is quite divided, quite febrile, and has got a fan base who have got that, that atmosphere of here we go again. Every time you concede a goal or lose a game, it's that, and it is a hard thing to get out of.
Yeah. John, do you think that's mixed, like Chris is saying there? There's that side of it, but then there's the expectation that they, of where they think they want to be or should be, Chris says, with that squad and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's certainly an element of that, and I think with with Liam Manning now, it's going to be fascinating to see how he gets on, because obviously his stock was very high after Bristol City last season and the jobs he'd done previously to that as well. And I think most people thought Norwich had done some good work there to bring him in. And then they just had that nightmare home form where they just couldn't get a win at home, and things sort of quite quickly disintegrated there. But I think we've spoken on this podcast before about the fact that probably when you sort of look at it, Norwich's squad, wasn't in the best of shape, and there were certainly weaknesses there. So from that point of view, he's going into Huddersfield, as you say, where there is a lot of expectation. But probably from his point of view, he's also probably thinking it's a great opportunity as well, and he has got some sort of quality players there. Someone like Alfie May, obviously, who's been there with Birmingham and Charlton and what have you. He should be a regular goal scorer in that division if they get the service to him. So there's probably a lot of positives in going into Huddersfield with the squad that they've got. And I suppose from Liam Manning's point of view, probably the important thing is, can he get off to a good start and get some momentum and get some belief behind him, because he doesn't want obviously a repeat of that Norwich sort of situation at the start, and then potentially the fans could maybe turn again. So I think from his point of view, he got quite a good thing if he could get a couple of home wins early doors. And I think I'm right in saying that I think they're home to Bradford this weekend, and will be his first game in charge. So that should be a cracking atmosphere at that game.
Nice derby to get you underway. Chris, is that getting the best out of Alfie May obviously going to be one of the big things? Is that something that went against sort of Lee Grant as well? Because he came in and scored so many goals at the level, and he's only got 5, I think, so far this season, and it's not been.
It's been the best for everyone, really. I mean, I think you can go around that squad, and obviously Radulovic has sort of come good this season, scored a few goals. Leo Castledine, when he was on loan there, was superb. Mm. Well, I think as a collective, you need to everyone needs to raise the game. But what the problem, I don't think Liam Manning is the sort of manager who, I don't think he's going to look at any one player. I guess you could play it Alfie May's strengths, but I'm not sure that's not Liam Manning's way. Liam, he's a very process-driven manager. He always has been. It's all about the system. It's actually a criticism that the supporters of the clubs he's been at have had fairly consistently, actually, is that the feel he's, this was even the case with Bristol City last year when they got to the playoffs. There was this feeling he played slightly with the handbrake on, and he was very rigid in the way he played and in the system. So I don't think you're going to see anything particularly different at Huddersfield. I think you'll go in very much in that way that he has, where you build from the back, you keep possession. It's not particularly dynamic. It's very slow and kind of studied, the way they build up play, which should work. They've got technically good players for that league. Whether it'll get the best out of Alfie May, I'm not entirely sure, but I don't think you'll focus on one particular player. But it is kind of why I think it is, as John says, you will need to get results, because I'm not criticising Liam. He's got a brilliant CV and has achieved a lot, but I think it's not the type of football that fans instantly fall in love with. They're not going to see a team that's kind of going for it and playing with the handbrake off. It's going to be more studied. It's going to be more build up, and I think for that reason, you will need results to get people on board.
Yeah, and obviously John Lee Grant, it's that first job. It's, I guess, trying to find the next one as quickly as possible to make sure he's learned from. I'm sure he would have learned a lot. He's obviously been, had a great career, hasn't he? And was alongside, he's been in it as a player, but at big clubs, and obviously was in alongside Kieran McKenna at Ipswich as well. So I guess the cliche, learn from your mistakes and put them right in the next job.
Yeah, because I think it's obviously you can always be on the the coaching staff, on the backroom staff, but having to make all the crucial decisions yourself. Everyone's looking to you for for leadership and guidance, and on the face of it, it did look like a great opportunity for him, because he obviously was going into Huddersfield, who obviously had that budget in League One and had a good squad of players that you thought he could make a good fist of it. And to be fair, you always feel slightly sorry for managers who go when their teams are kind of in the playoff places or what have you. But I think, as we've sort of said there, the results had taken a downturn over a period of time, and obviously poor performances as well. So I'm sure he will have learned a lot from it, and I'm sure he'll come back. He'll come back if he wants to have another crack at it. He'll come back a better manager from what he's learned this time around.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's stick with that Ipswich theme. I think possibly our record of talking teams up on this podcast isn't the best. They tend to go and not always back our words up afterwards. So get all your money on Bristol City to win their game in midweek against Ipswich. But Chris, if you're in the Championship at that top, are you thinking, oh, Ipswich, they're on a roll, they're coming for everybody, and they're right in that title race now, aren't they? Surely.
Yeah, I think so. I think no disrespect to Middlesbrough, but I do think they are probably the team who are going to run Coventry closest, if anyone is, because the results have been excellent over a period of time. I was looking at I think, again, since about November, they've taken more points than anybody else. In fact, since October, I think they've taken more points than anybody else. So it's not all of a sudden. It's form over a period. And I just think, we always say it, don't we? If you get the league table and you line up the budgets, and then you look at it at the end of the season, generally the highest budget will win the league. And I think all of a sudden you're just seeing the financial power that Ipswich have and the squad depth they've got from being in the Premier League. I mean, I was looking at the weekend, when they beat Blackburn 3-0. And you take off Marcelino Nunes, you bring on 10 million Sammy Smodics, you take off Jayden Philogene, you bring on 20 million Jack Clark. And that's the sort of things they can do, and when you can, especially if you look over the Christmas period when so many teams have been sort of decimated by injury. You look at Hull, who had sort of 12 or 13 fit players for the weekend, and Ipswich are doing that. Ipswich are bringing £20 million players off the bench. That's the difference. And they're probably the only team in the Championship who can do that. Coventry. So I think that's the difference. They're now shown that they've got these weapons all over the place. They've got the depth, they've got the strength, they've got the form. Yeah, I think I would definitely tip them to finish in the top two. It's just where.
Let's talk about Nunes as well, because you've done the profile on him for Sunday's FLP, I believe. One of the biggest sort of talking points of the summer was his move to the club. But how much of an impact is he having? Is that we kind of now seeing actually this is why you went and got him? Yeah,
absolutely. I think, as I say, I looked at him sort of in depth this week for the profile, and yeah, obviously it was massively controversial, wasn't it, when he went from Norwich, and it caused absolute outrage. First player to move from Norwich to Ipswich for over 20 years. But yeah, basically what they've done with him, I've said this in the profile, so I'll just go over it briefly. But I think if you look over Marcelino Nunes' career, he's this Swiss Army knife who has played here, there, everywhere. There's practically not a position. Well, there's no position in midfield he hasn't played, and nobody was ever seemed to quite consistently put him in the same place and be sure what was the best. But what Kieran McKenna's done is put him behind the striker, played him as a number 10. And it's just, you're just seeing a so much more consistent version, a much better player, someone who's endlessly sort of productive and creative. He tops loads of stats for chance creation, goal creation. And he's just, basically what he's done is he's kind of glued that attack together in a way that they were playing Sammy Smodics there, they were playing Chuba Akpom there, who were really strikers, that they're really strikers playing in a number 10 role. He's a midfielder playing in a number 10 role. And I think you're just seeing that it works much better because there are so many attacking players around him. He's kind of the one that makes their attack function. And that's just, you're sort of seeing that just work now really well.
Yeah, John, Kieran McKenna has lots of lovely options every time he sits down and writes out his team, his starting 11, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think we do obviously just seeing the benefits now of the squad strength that they've got. So, once they've got on that roll now, you sort of imagine it will be difficult to stop them. And obviously, in that incredible run they had from League One straight through to the Premier League, they obviously were able to get on those type of runs that you need to really sustain a promotion challenge. So Kieran McKenna knows what it takes. he's got a squad, that's probably the envy of virtually everyone in the Championship. And now they've actually started to string it together after a bit of a ropey start to the season. They are looking as though they will be, there or thereabouts up there with Coventry and Borough and what have you. So, interesting to see Nunez sort of, hitting sort of top 4 now. He's got that versatility where he can obviously create in open play, but he can also obviously create with his set pieces, with his corners, with his free kicks and what have you as well. So certainly a good player for them to have at Championship level, and Norwich will be probably ruin the fact that they felt they had to sell him.
Yeah, that's going to stick in their minds for a long time, I'm sure. Chris, you mentioned Middlesbrough there. That slightly bonkers finish to their game against West Brom and got the win on at the weekend, didn't they? But a tough one for Eric Ramsay in his first game as West Brom manager.
Yeah, it was a good. To be fair, I think he probably saw a lot of things that he wanted to see in terms of the way that, them coming back for the 2-2, and that's been a bit of a soft touch, haven't they? So to see them come back to 2-2 was probably a good start. And at the end of the day, they're playing the team who was second in the league, had a bit of form behind them. So I think he'd have wanted to take something from the game, but I don't think he'd be too disappointed. And I was looking at the team, and are they the best team in the Championship? No, but there's certainly there's players there that if he gets a hold of them and gets them organised, there's no reason they can't challenge for the top 6. Really, if they get going, they've got good enough players. Especially sort of if you look at Mikey Johnston and the assists he's got and the ability he's got on the ball. Yeah, I think that they're not far off. They just need someone to kind of get them a bit more solid at the back, get them a bit more organised, a bit more resilient and hard to beat. And I think you saw both sides of it on Saturday. If they can stop conceding the daft goals, then they should improve rapidly. But I don't think you'll be too disappointed.
John, great win for Middlesbrough, but if you're a Borough fan and you're opening your phone and seeing Hayden Hackney linked to Manchester United, where your former manager kind of is in this interim period, obviously, which has started very, very well. But January is always a slightly stressful time as for when you're a little bit further down the food chain. I think he's been linked to Spurs and Everton as well. Are you kind of just really hoping you can just somehow get through to the end of the month and him still be part of your team?
Well, yeah, exactly, because the situation that they're in, they're going for promotion in the Premier League. How much could that be worth to them, sort of financially as well? So you wouldn't want to lose one of your biggest assets at this stage of the season. Obviously, they obviously lost Rob Edwards a few months ago now, and had to replace him. And obviously, Kim Hellberg's come in and done a really good job there. Hayden Hackney's sort of shown his ability, shown his class, especially of late as well. So. Obviously, there's clearly going to be people sort of looking at him and wanting him. He's obviously a local lad for Borough, so he no doubt want to get them up. But obviously, if they do get a huge offer comes in that from his own point of view, it's a short career. It's you're always one injury away. Things might not come around again. So if you do get that once in a lifetime offer at this stage, you couldn't blame him for considering it. So I think everyone at Middle is going to be praying that he's still with them sort of come the end of the month.
I think what you would say about Hackney as well is he showed, obviously, because Middlesbrough accepted a £20 million bid from Ipswich in the summer, which Hackney rejected, and that looks very sensible now, because obviously whether it was through his loyalty to the club, whether it was because he knew he would have better options down the line, but it's certainly instead of having his only option as Ipswich, he's now got some of the biggest clubs in the Premier League chasing him. So he's definitely sort of vindicated that decision. But I think Hackney sort of kind of said that, or certainly let it be known that his preference is to stay at Borough, try and help them win promotion. Borough themselves have said it would take a staggering offer to buy him. But it's all very well, but then when Man United come for you, if he is faced with that decision, I mean, how many players playing in the Championship are going to turn down and move to Manchester United? I don't think many.
No, I think unplug the fax machine if you're in Middlesbrough, possibly, and bring on February. Big South Coast derby on the weekend as well, with Portsmouth hosting Southampton. If you're Southampton, are you, Chris? Are you looking forward to a trip to Fratton Park?
Well, no.
You need it.
Well, they haven't won there for years and years. I think it's in like 1984 since they won there in the league. It's a long time since they won at Fratton Park in the league. I know they won a League Cup game there a few years ago, but traditionally a hard place for them to go anyway. But yeah, just they're on a stinking run, Southampton. So that was, they lost to Hull at the weekend, who, we've already touched on. Hull barely had a squad to choose from, but they still beat them. So they lost 2-1 to Hull. 7 games without a win. Play Sheffield United at home tonight. So, that's a massive game for them, really, because if they don't win that one, 8 games without a win, going to your biggest rivals who have actually picked up themselves. If you take out that 5-0 hiding against Bristol City, they're on a decent run of form. You need, if you're trying to record, you need that game like a hole on the head, don't you?
John, you were telling us earlier about you went to a testimonial work between Portsmouth and Southampton many years ago, which sounds completely, but testimonial against your deadly rivals.
Yeah, it was Alan Knight, the Portsmouth legendary goalkeeper's testimonial. It was Pompey Southampton at Fratton Park, and it was obviously a big crowd there, and it probably wasn't the usual sort of testimonial atmosphere, and certainly it was certainly a pretty lively affair, and for a league game, obviously this weekend it's going to be sort of even livelier, I would have thought.
Yeah, definitely. Like Chris says, they've got Sheffield United in midweek. There's it's a full programme in the Championship, isn't it? Coventry, Millwall, Wrexham, Birmingham. Is that the one that we still called in Wrexham, Birmingham, the Hollywood Derby, even though Birmingham aren't from and everyone from Birmingham's from Hollywood, sort of?
Yes, I think it's still the Hollywood Derby, though, isn't it?
Even though, but how can it be the Birmingham to do with Hollywood?
They've probably got someone. Probably one of their investors will be from, California somewhere.
Well, Tom Brady's out in Las Vegas at the moment trying to work out who the Las Vegas Raiders make most of with their number 1 pick. So he's got other things he's to be worrying about as well. Talking of players who might be catching the eye, why don't we move on to Dom Ballard at Leyton Orient, because he is absolutely flying, John, isn't he? Is it hat-trick on Saturday against Reading, his former club, where he had a loan spell. I think he's at 5 in his last 3, 7 in his last 8, or 8 in his last 7. He's a nice start to the year for him, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the stats, I mean, top scorer in League One with 15 goals. Got him from Southampton in, I think, the end of the window in September. Got him in the start of September. Credit to Richie Wellens and the scouting staff at recruitment staff at Leyton Orient, because they've done a great bit of business there. He's only 20 years old, so a hat trick at the weekend. I saw a few highlights. He had a couple disallowed for offside before he'd even scored. He hit the post after he got his hat trick. He hit the post. So he could have had 5 or 6. So he's obviously one that people will be looking at, because anyone scoring that amount of goals, in football, that if you can put the ball in the back of the net, it's highly valuable. So if he keeps scoring, there's definitely going to be clubs sort of looking at him. I mean, obviously, Leyton Orient aren't even having they're not having the best of seasons either, and so it's even more of a credit to him that he's got that amount of goals. If he can keep going at this rate, then he's only going to get more and more admirers and clubs looking at him.
Yeah, Chris, are you going to put him straight in your fantasy football team on Saturday and ruin his current goal streak? Tends to be how your EFL teams work. We were talking just before we came on that you'd spoken to Richie Wellens about Aaron Connolly, who's obviously got the injury at Orient, and that's they needed someone to kind of step into his shoes, I guess, a little bit.
That's it. Yeah, it's been perfect timing with Dom Ballard, because Aaron Connolly was kind of leading the charge at the start of the season, and when he got injured, I think he had surgery, didn't he, in December? And it's like, it's indeterminate return time with Aaron Connolly. So yeah, he stepped up. It's just a shame for Leyton Orient because they get these players doing it. They had Charlie Kelman last year, who was top scorer in League One, and he obviously, Richie's obviously got a knack with forwards. He gets them firing, but then he gets them firing and then they leave at the end of the season. And I think you can basically, as John said, that Dom Ballard keeps this up. There's no way he's going to be at Leyton Orient next year. Someone will come, someone will stick some money, and he'll be off to the Championship. So and then I spoke to Richie about it earlier this season, and the fact they have to just constantly rebuild. But I guess the positive for him and for them is that you can literally, if you're trying to sign a player or you're trying to loan a player, you can just point to those guys and go, look, there's Charlie Kelman, there's Dom Ballard, even Aaron Connolly. They've kind of revived his career for him. So there'll never be a shortage of people who want to play there and want to play under Richie, which I guess is the positive you can take from it.
Yeah, John, obviously, you say he's only 20, so very young, but interesting sometimes, isn't it, how he's kind of really caught a light here at Orient. He's had the other loan spells where he hasn't been, scoring loads of goals or anything. So it seems he's really obviously kind of settling into kind of life at these levels now and showing what he's all about.
Yeah, and obviously when he's had those, he's only 20 now, so when he's had those loan spells, obviously he was younger, he was probably learning. It's perhaps not as easy to go out on loan at times and score goals. Obviously you're always going into a new environment. It might have taken that sort of permanent move to Leyton Orient to obviously maybe feel more settled, secure, getting more game time. Obviously, if he scores, then you're getting more game time, and now he'll be one of the first names on the team sheet. So as you get that experience, you're getting that knowledge of where you need to be, where you need to go. He's probably picking up tips from someone like Aaron Connolly. The other players there have got sort of plenty of experience. So it's all going to be a learning curve, and once players get that momentum, get that confidence, it can be very rewarding for them, and they can sort of grow and grow.
Yeah, Chris, we talked about Lincoln City, haven't we, on here, and how well they're going. Cardiff, obviously top of the league. They had a huge win against Bradford at the weekend as well, didn't they? So you kind of expecting them to really start pulling away in that automatic promotion race. Yeah,
well, they kind of are, aren't they? I mean, they're the most consistent team in League One by some distance, really. And I think you've got to. The only thing that's going to derail them at this point would be if somebody comes in for Brian Barry Murphy, I think, because that's the most likely. I don't think they're going to lose any players, but he is clearly massively admired by a lot of clubs. He's been linked to a few other jobs in the past, and I think if anything's going to happen, that's what it'll be. But at the same time, would he want to do that? Would he rather stay and get the promotion on his CV and kind of finish the job? But yeah, I think when you look at the quality they've got, they're playing great football. They could still, I think, like any Cardiff fan will tell you, they could probably still do with a few more experienced heads to get them over the line. It's a very young team, but saying that they've got Saleh who's scoring a load of goals. They've got good players. I don't really see. I don't see anybody catch them unless they suffer a lot of injuries, or unless Brian Barry Murphy goes. I think that'll be them.
John, let's go into League Two in the top of the table there, and there's obviously that big win for Salford City against Swindon on Saturday, wasn't there? And Salford, they've kind of been threatening to move into that, really maybe not sort of quite gone how they'd expected possibly in League Two. Obviously been there a few years now since their promotion. They've rocketed up the pyramid since the class of '92 came in, and they haven't quite had it all their own way in League Two. But that was a big win for them, obviously under Carl Robinson. Now, do you sort of feel like, excuse me, that they maybe can start thinking, could this be the year where we can sort of get over that line?
Yeah, I mean, it does look as though they're going to be right there in the shake-up, because I think we have seen for quite a few years now, I think most quite often they've been tipped to be, to win promotion or what have you, and be right up there. But it's not really happened. They've been on the been on the fringes of things. Whereas this time around, they are actually right there in the thick of it. And to go to Swindon at the weekend and get that win was a bit of a statement that from them that they do mean business this time. And obviously, Carl Robinson's been around a long time. I think he obviously had that great success at the start of his managerial career at MK Dons, so he's got sort of bags of experience, and he'll fancy it. And I think in Kelly and Mai, they've got a very exciting sort of young attacker as well. So he's one to keep an eye on, and it does look as though it's going to be a really good battle in that League Two for those promotion places.
Yeah,
they've had a lot of knee-jerk reactions in the past. Like, when they sacked Richie Wellens just after they'd won the trophy, and they've sort of sacked they sacked Graham Alexander as well, didn't they? They've sacked a lot of people who I think, given time, would have probably been successful there. So I think the test for Salford will come when, if and when there's a dip, and a bit of a sustained dip in form. Will they keep the faith? Will they stick with Carl? And then I think if they do that, they'll probably be okay. But that's been their Achilles heel in the past, is just the chopping and changing too much when they've had good players, good budgets, and they've just not stuck with things. So I think that'll be the acid test for them.
Mm. Yeah, obviously signed Ryan Graydon as well, didn't they, from Fleetwood the other week. So you kind of feel like there's that sort of movement, like, right, this is our chance now. Let's really let's kind of really go for it. But Walsall had a good win on Saturday, or an important win, John, beating Tranmere, just because of the 4-game winless run they were on. But everything feels better after a win, and especially when you've been on a bit of a tricky run like they have. Yeah,
that was a pretty important win for them, that one at Tranmere, to just get sort of things back on track. And one thing you would say with Walsall is that they have got some firepower. I mean, Jamil Matt's been around a long time, and he scored a good goal at the weekend. And another player that I've kind of liked this season is Daniel Kanu, who's on loan there. He looks a really exciting sort of forward, and he scored quite a number of goals in different ways as well. So they have got some firepower there, and I'm sort of seeing one or two of the highlights from the weekend. You got Aidan Flint sort of putting over a great cross for one of the goals as well. So it helps if you've got sort of towering centre backs who can sort of do that as well.
He's played practically every game as well, hasn't he, Aidan Flint, I think, this season, despite being about 102.
Well, yeah, when I saw him against Cambridge on New Year's Day, he started there. They're a huge team. They're massive, but yeah, Aidan Flint is one of the biggest. But again, I get on my non-league box, but he's come right through the ranks. I think he was playing like Pinkston in like sort of I think he was at Pinkston before he got picked up by Alfreton, and he kind of came through this sort of reputation, played for England C. He was centre back alongside Carl McFadzean, who's obviously gone on and played in the Championship as well, and they made an unbelievable partnership in the National League Conference North, as it was then, under Nicky Law, and won promotion. But he's gone and had a brilliant career. And sometimes I think when you come through those routes, you're going to try and play on as long as you can. But they've got quite a few ex-non-league boys in Walsall's squad, to be fair. But Chris, as John says, it is interesting up the top there. MK Don's obviously been strengthening as well. You've got Bromley flying. We've talked about them recently and what a good job Andy Woodman was doing there. Swindon with Ian Holloway. I know he sort of had a bit of an interesting week last week with the whole sort of player eligibility rows that are kind of been going on. But it's a fascinating one at the top of that table, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think everyone's been sort of waiting for MK Dons to come good, haven't they? Because they spent a lot of money in the summer, and they've got a great squad, and it just wasn't quite happening for them at the start of the season. And then all of a sudden now you can see them, they're putting the wins together and they're keeping clean sheets, and it's all kind of coming together. And I'd be very surprised if they don't sort of, if they have another blip now. I think, especially under Paul Warren, who's an absolute promotion specialist, I think you'll see them kind of really steam on now. But yeah, it's wide open as it always is in that division. Well, so you've got to think that some lessons will have been learned from last season. It's funny. I spoke to Sadler last week and asked him about that. I said, like, every time if you're having a bad run at this time, and every defeat, there's going to be people who bring up last year, people like me who were speaking to him at the time.
They've probably completely forgotten until he speaks to any journalist who's in mind. He's like, oh yeah,
well, they have, yeah, but I didn't. That was the thing. He said, it's not in anybody's minds. We're just thinking about this season, etc., etc. But yes, I didn't believe him. I'm sure it will. So yeah, it was really important for them to win. And I think lessons will have been learned. You've seen it a lot of teams who struggle like that, and then all of a sudden bounce back and learn from it. So I think they'll be strong. And yeah, it'll just be about at that level. It's about who has a look with the injuries, who has a look with the fixtures. There's so little between the sides. But if you want my sort of tip, it's like Bromley are a little bit like, Bromley have got the feel of they've gone off fast, haven't they? And it's whether they can keep it up down the home straight. But yeah, I think my tip would be MK Dons, just because I look at their squad and I don't see a better squad in League Two.
Come through. Obviously, you got Cambridge United on good form, hanging around there. Notts County just signed Bekray Nuru from Tamworth, who is amazed he hadn't gone on sooner than he had, because he's one of Nonny's best players over the last couple of years. I think he sort of ripped up against Tottenham and then still didn't get his move, so he's had to wait a little while. But it is an interesting open race there, John, isn't it? And that's I guess that's the sort of the beauty of that division, that kind of anybody probably does feel like they can kind of get into that mix, and that makes the top end of it so exciting.
Yeah, and I think there's probably other teams that you could sort of look at, probably as well. I mean, you've got teams like, well, for example, Colchester. We've spoken about them quite a few times. So it's going to be a real battle. Obviously, you've got Notts County. You've got, Chesterfield will fancy themselves to be in the mix as well. So that one is looking as though it's going to be quite tasty. Obviously, Bromley have got a little bit of a lead at the moment, but it does look as though it's going to be a bit of a dogfight. I think when you do look at the squad that MK Dons have put together, I think if it was played on paper, you would fancy them to win it, because they've got players there with a lot of pedigree, a lot of players who played in sort of higher divisions. So you would imagine with Paul Warren there as well that they should be there or thereabouts. Otherwise, I think they'll be very, very disappointed. But yeah, it looks as though it's going to be a real fascinating battle, that division.
Yeah, Chris, we're probably not quite there yet, but Barnet manager Dean Brennan always refers to the sort of back end of the season as the championship rounds, and that's where you sort of knock someone out or get knocked out. And do you think, as John's saying, the players that MK Dons have got there, that will count for a lot in the coming months, when it is kind of that, just try and win however you need to and just get points over time.
It's not just the players either, though. It's, as we touched on with Ipswich earlier, it's the depth. And that's even more important at that level. I think that's what really counts, because when you get to those end stages and you've been playing for 8-9 months, it's the teams. I think that might be what Bromley struggle with in the end, is whether they've got a deep enough squad that they can rotate and keep people fresh in the way that MK Dons can. So it's I think ultimately it's a combination of experience and depth that will genuinely win you the day. But Paul Warren's the big thing. I think Warney, he's been through this a million times. He's been up there with Rotherham. He's done it with Rotherham. He's done it with Derby, and he plays in that. He's very much a sort of, he'll do whatever it takes to win. Warney, he doesn't care if it's pretty. He doesn't care how he gets the job done. He just gets the job done. And I think that will count for a lot towards the end of the season. I think there'll be no nerves from him, and that'll seep through.
Yeah, definitely. We'll sort of wrap it up in a minute, but one final thing just to touch on before we do, Chris, you've written about this extensively, and parachute payments, and the regulator, the incoming regulator, whenever that's going to officially be, has said that they're going to review parachute payments as part of it all.
Well, I'll not beat on about it too long, because we're going to do a whole episode on parachute payments. But yes, if my opinion is, if the regulator achieves nothing else in its whole time, if it was to abolish parachute payments, that would be a crowning achievement and all it needs to do. Because to me, and if you ask a lot of owners of EFL clubs, they are the sort of biggest poison in the game. Really, there's, you know, you can talk to Premier League clubs and they'll all say how necessary they are, but it's nonsense. It's, you know, they're necessary for the Premier League because they want to keep getting the best players and get the big TV deals, and that's why they're necessary, because they encourage Premier League clubs to spend a lot of money without having to worry about it. But for the game, for competitiveness, for the health of Championship clubs, they're a disgrace, really, and there's no objective reason for them to exist. All they do is distort competition. They encourage Championship clubs to spend recklessly. That then filters down the division. That's why you see the escalation in wages. More to the point, they also, because Premier League clubs can spend so freely, they are not incentivized in any way to spend less. Whereas if parachute payments were there, Premier League clubs would naturally have to spend less. They would have to, because they'd have to have an eye on the back door for when they went down. That in turn would shut the gulf a little bit in a very organic, natural way. And then a lot of the other problems would go away. So I think anybody who argues for parachute payments is doing so purely out of self-interest. I think there's no objective argument for them. I think they are a sort of cancer on the EFL and need cutting out at the earliest opportunity.
We will see, like we say, a special parachute payments episode to come, where you just fire up, Chris, and just talk away.
Yeah.
Just fill 45 minutes with that.
Sit here ranting himself.
Just like, we don't even need to record it. We don't even tell you. Just say, yeah, just go. But, we'll leave it there, chaps. Thanks very much. Thanks everybody for tuning in. If you're out at games in midweek, then enjoy those, and at the weekend. And as I said, make sure you like and subscribe to this podcast and this YouTube channel. Also, make sure you pick up a copy of Sunday's FLP. John, I know it's early in the week. Any sort of little teasers you can give us ahead of what might be coming in this Sunday? Have you got that far? Have you done your flat plan yet?
Yeah, flat plans in the can. I mean, I know we've got Adam Virgo. We've got an Adam Virgo column this week, so it'll obviously be interesting to see what he's got to say about the latest EFL sort of scene. Obviously, we're going to have the Huddersfield stuff with Liam Manning coming in, and obviously we'll have all the sort of regular stuff and the match reports and what have you that we usually have. I'm sure by the time the weekend comes around, there'll be plenty more news. Will have developed by then as well.
There'll be lots of things going on. But chaps, thanks for your time. Really appreciate it, and we will see you all next week.